when this happened, it almost became like it became a second job, right? Those of you parents and caregivers out there who have children with epilepsy, you understand it becomes, you're doing research, you're educating people, you're up late at night because you're trying to learn what's the best medicine, what can I do to help, or different things, and how do I keep, trying, like with my child, like you don't want it to be that everything just becomes so different to the child that, we get to the point kind of where when that happens, like you just want to shield them. You want to shield them from the world. You almost, if you could, for some, you feel like you just want to put them in a bubble and just watch them and what have you. But we have to learn that we, can release the reins on them and let them kind of go ahead and do certain things in many circumstances. And in others, you're just like, you know what, this is the best thing for my child, right? You have to do what works best for your child and your family. And you cannot feel, or you should not feel bad about your decisions or your choices. And one thing that I discovered is that, sometimes when we're raising children, that's whether they have a condition or not, a lot of people are going to have ideas about what you should do and how you should raise your child. But you have to know that when you make that decision, that it is the best decision for your family and for your child, regardless of what anyone else thinks. And you have to be okay with that, with your decision. And so, I'm okay with my decisions. I've had to make some of them, and I've had to speak up about certain things and realize this. Sometimes people are going to get it and sometimes they're not. That's just the way the world is. Sometimes they'll understand why you're doing, what your choices are, and sometimes they won't. And once again, you're going to have to be okay with that, and don't let people sway you or, what's the word I want to say? Just, in your decision, like you finally said, okay, I'm going to do this. Like some parents may say, I feel like I need to homeschool my child, right? If that's what you feel like you need to do, then go ahead and do it, right? And be comfortable with your decision. Don't, go back and forth and maybe I thought it was the right thing. Try it. That's what I want to say. I know sometimes, people get on the homeschool community. I'm not going to stay on that, but, hey, you do what's best for your child. And those people who kind of get on people, have conversations. Don't just get on them. You never know why that parent's doing what they're doing. A lot of times, like what I want to say is it's important for us not to make a doctrine out of an encounter. What's that mean? We have one encounter with a family, one encounter with a child, and all of a sudden it's like, it's a whole script that's being written up. We don't want to do that. We want to go and have conversations with the family. It's important as educators that you partner with the family, especially if that child has a condition. Partner with them. Don't try to buck up against them and we know better, we studied and all of those things. No, this parent is with this child all night long. Even when you're sleeping, usually this parent is up at night. Probably, I don't know about you, but if you're a caregiver, when your child is diagnosed, I'm sure your sleep pattern changed. It had to have changed greatly. Your sleep pattern changes. You want to know if they're okay. You're checking to see if they're breathing. It's a whole lot of different things that you do. And that's the way that it is. But I want to say this too. This is just us having a little talk. Next time I'll give you a lot more statistics and all this other stuff. But if you're that caregiver, you have to find a way. And I know this is going to sound like, oh yeah, I know. Yeah, right. How do I do that? You've got to find a way to take care of yourself. And I get it. I get it. When this happens, you feel like, especially, I don't know how much support you have. It's important to have people support. It's important to talk to your relatives, to your family members and say, listen, this is what happened. This is the diagnosis. This is what we need to do. And I'd love your support, and see if they'll support you. See if they'll give you a moment where you can just, someone who you really, really trust, ask them to come over so you can take a nap. Because I feel like as long as you know that somebody's watching your child who you can trust, a trusted individual, maybe you're a husband and wife and you're saying, hun, can you just let me take like an hour nap, so that you're not wondering, like you can just sleep, just go to sleep, do something, make sure, like, take that extra long bath if you can, and just soak and relax. Put on some soaking music. I love soaking music. SOKING. What is that? That's music where it's like someone's playing beautiful hymns, worship to God. I put that on. Sometimes when my daughter was getting ready or trying to rest, I would put that soaking music on, and it would help her just to be able to just relax, just be able to rest, to fall asleep or what have you, or just to relax. Because even with epilepsy, now I didn't know this, some of you, did you know that there's also insomnia sometimes that's tied to an epilepsy diagnosis? Did you know that? So for those of you, if you didn't know it and you notice like, oh my gosh, my child is up like all night and this, that, and the other, ask the doctor, like, hey, my child is not sleeping. Tell them everything. Don't leave anything out because you're like, that's not a big deal. They just don't sleep. That's just a child. No, tell them. And then you will find out sometimes that they will tell you, oh yes, that just means that there's an insomnia that's associated with your child's diagnosis. So it's a whole gamut of things that we can talk about. But the main reason why I'm here once again, I'm going to get ready to close out, is because we need to talk about it. We need to spread awareness. We need to be understanding and not judgmental. We need to take the stigmas away. There's a lot of stigmas. Back in the day, the early days, right? So people didn't have as much knowledge about medical things. And so if there was something wrong, they would automatically say, it's a demon, just automatically. And so sometimes people will automatically go there. And I'm saying, if you are a person of faith, a pastor, a leader in a religious institution or whatever it is, be mindful, be careful, be empathetic, be sympathetic about dealing with people who have chronic illnesses. Now, I'm a woman of faith. I do believe God can do anything. And I know, listen, there might be some atheists who are listening to me, or some people who don't believe in God, and, get what you can out of this. But that's a place where I'm going to speak from, because that's my conviction. That's my relationship. Get the rest of the knowledge and, take what you can. Right. But, I think back in the day, that's what they did because they didn't know any better. And almost everything that looked interesting, looked different, seemed strange, automatically it was a demon, and then they just went after people, right? We know better now. We realize that there are chemical imbalances, just like a person who has high blood pressure or diabetes takes insulin because it affects those organs, the liver, the kidney, those are organs. The brain is an organ. And so it's going to show up differently when it's epilepsy or a neurological disorder. It's going to show up differently. And so we need to say or pay attention to it. Do I pray for her healing? You better believe I do. Wouldn't make sense if I didn't. And thank God, sometimes I see wonderful results, right? But with that thought in mind, sometimes people do take medication, and sometimes we take a natural route. But whatever it is, I think the main thing that I want to say is that we need to learn, if you or someone doesn't know how to do it, to be more sympathetic, empathetic, understanding when it comes to people who have epilepsy or any other chronic disease. It's not easy for that person. It's not easy for that family. I was pretty shocked. There were times when I've had to forgive people for how they've treated my daughter. And that's inside and outside of religious communities. I've had to forgive them because I've watched people do this favoritism thing. If it was her and another child, I would watch how they treated the other child and how they looked at her. And she saw it. She realized it. That's the other piece. Realize that children are watching what it is that we do as leaders, as people of influence, right? Inside and outside of the church community. You may chuck it up as, whatever. That's no big deal, right? That doesn't matter. Moving on. That's just one child out of 1,000. I have millions of people who watch me or who follow me. That's just one child. No, but that's God's child. That's God's one child. And so my daughter, of course, if you have children, your children are important to you and they're important to God. And so that's why sometimes I have to speak up and I have to go, I have to bring awareness. Even when there are times when most recently I had to say something. I was hoping that I didn't have to say something. I kept waiting. I don't want to say anything. Oh gosh, would they stop? Are they going to stop? Right? Okay, they're going to stop. Right? And so I had literally, in that circumstance, right, there was a whole taping that was going on. I wasn't even on the set, and I had to tell the person off the set behind the camera, listen, I'm her mom, I'm her advocate. This is what epilepsy is. This is what happens. Sometimes a person who has epilepsy, their memory, right, the brain cells, there's something that happens to the brain cells. Sometimes they die off, and so they may not remember things as readily. People with epilepsy will tell you there are even some people who they don't even remember their husband or their wife. They have a seizure. And if it's a bad enough seizure, and most of them, none of them to me are good, but if it's bad enough and it affects their brain that way, they may not remember. They may have to learn relationships that they've had for years. They may have to relearn who their husband is, who their wife is. And that's nothing to joke about. And I know there are people who laugh, we got, what do we call them? People call them trolls, and what I don't call. I just could say they're just not sympathetic, and they just need to learn to do better, right? But realize you have a whole community of people out here who do care, who do care about what you're going through if you're dealing with it, who do care about your children, who are cheering you on, who want you to get some rest, who want you to be encouraged, who want you to know that you are loved, that you are loved. You're not a freak, or, some people, they just use the worst terms about things that people go through. And that's just not the case, right? I look at people like Danny Glover, right? So, I know I look on social media, see he was diagnosed with epilepsy. I look at the marathon runner, I think that was Flojo at the time, who did great things, right? Prince did great things. He was bullied in school. So look at what it pushed him to do. Man, he operated in his that creative ability, right? Because he was bullied, so he went somewhere and he was like, well, they're bullying me. I'm going to sit down somewhere and go write some music. And that was probably one of the good things that happened for him in his life, right? And so why am I saying that? Because in anything and anywhere that we find ourselves, it can be used for the greater good, regardless of who's bullying or bashing or doesn't understand, or who's taking what you're going through lightly, or who's acting like they're a know-it-all, right? I already know what it's like. Or people will say things to me and I have to forgive them. Oh, that I've dealt with children, those type of children. Well, what's that mean? What are those type of children? I don't get it, right? Because there's also special needs that comes with it, because every child is special and everyone has needs, but they have different needs. I want to say that again. Every child is special and every child has needs, but they have different needs. Okay? And so remember that. I'm putting that in quotes. That's mine. But you can use it. And so, sometimes, people will lump special needs children together. Well, that's wrong, because they don't have the same needs. Their DNA is different. The way that they think is different. Their fingerprints is different. So how can we say that we're just going to lump them together? And I get it. You have to find a way to support and work with these children. But even in doing that, they're not all the same. That's like a teacher coming from upstate and going to a school or somewhere else and saying, oh, I read about the children in this particular community. This is how we deal with all of them because they like to twerk or they like to in that community. No. Not every child is the same. Not every child is raised the same. If they like to dance and twerk, that's that child. Then you have children who don't do those type of dances. Or you have children who have different types of special needs.